The humans shrieked and clawed at their restraints, as the Zorgaxian slavers dragged them deeper into the bowels of the alien ship, not knowing they had just awoken an ancient power that would make them regret ever crossing humanity's path. In the year 3547, the Zorgaxian exploration vessel Xyloth's Pride stalked the fringe of explored space. The ship's cruel reptilian captain Xyloth saw only opportunity in the wild reaches of the Outer Rim, new civilizations to conquer, riches to plunder, slaves to capture. But today he found something different. Adrift in the void was the ancient remains of a human ship. The derelict seemed dead, its life support offline. Only one human life sign remained. Xyloth sent an armed boarding party. His slavers dragged a cryopod onto the bridge, hissing and grunting as they pried it open. Blue fluid gushed out. Inside was a withered human male, eyes closed, skin deathly pale. Impossibly, he drew a shuddering breath. His eyes snapped open, fixing on Xyloth with eerie intensity. Without moving his cracked lips, a voice boomed through the minds of all on the bridge. "I am Granthor. I have slept long and travelled far. Speak your deepest wish, and I shall make it so." Xyloth's eyes narrowed. He smelled profit. This human could be his key to ruling the galaxy. The fool had no idea who he was dealing with. Xyloth flashed a mouthful of jagged teeth. "I wish for the power to conquer the stars. Grant me this human, and your life shall be spared." Granthor's withered lips twisted into a smile. "Your wish is granted." Granthor knew these arrogant aliens would soon learn the terrible price of their greed, and all would tremble to behold the wrath of humanity unleashed once more upon the stars. The Zorgaxian Empire fell easily to Xyloth's conquest. His powers granted by Granthor allowed him to crush any resistance. Entire armies kneeled before him or were wiped out in an instant. The once proud Zorgaxian emperor was forced to surrender his crown to Xyloth in front of a cheering crowd. "All hail the mighty Xyloth, ruler of the stars," the throngs chanted, as the humiliated former ruler was dragged away in chains to the dungeons. But Xyloth's hunger for power was insatiable. He craved more worlds to dominate. He turned his gaze outward to the rest of the galaxy. On planet after planet, the scene repeated. Xyloth's armada would drop out of hyperspace in overwhelming force. His soldiers, armed with weapons that sliced through any defense, would storm the cities. The aliens would fight bravely, but futilely. Soon, their leaders too would kneel before Xyloth. "You are now slaves of the Zorgaxian Empire," he would proclaim. "Your sole purpose is to serve my will. Those who resist will be exterminated." The enslaved aliens were put to work, building immense orbital shipyards and weapons factories. Raw materials and wealth from hundreds of worlds poured in to feed Xyloth's relentless war machine. His power grew with each conquest. Through it all, the withered form of Granthor remained at Xyloth's side, a sinister, whispering presence. "You've done well, but there are far greater prizes to be won," Granthor rasped in Xyloth's mind, as they surveyed a sprawling new shipyard from the viewport of the flagship. Ranks of fearsome Zorgaxian battle cruisers stretched as far as the eye could see. "What greater prizes?" "The humans. Their worlds are rich in resources your empire needs. Their technology and weapons are highly advanced. Seizing their systems will make you unstoppable." Xyloth's eyes gleamed with avarice. "Then the humans will be conquered next." Granthor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Everything was proceeding as he had foreseen. The arrogant Zorgaxian had no inkling he was being used as a pawn in a far grander scheme. Long ago, before their civilizations took to the stars, the Zorgaxians and humans had fought a war so terrible it nearly eradicated both species. Granthor had been there through it all, a shadowy presence pulling the strings on both sides, delighting in the slaughter. The two sides had eventually pulled back from the brink of annihilation and gone their separate ways out into the galaxy. But Granthor never forgot. He had waited millennia for a chance to reignite that ancient conflict. And now Xyloth would be the spark to start the flames of war anew. As the Zorgaxian fleet set course for human space, the Terran Alliance convened an emergency summit of their wisest leaders and most brilliant military minds. Admiral Varric Thorn, his green eyes hard as flint, addressed the council. "This Zorgaxian empire has carved a bloody path through the galaxy, enslaving every civilization it encounters," Thorn said grimly, pulling up star maps showing the extent of Xyloth's conquests. "And now, the tyrant Xyloth has turned his eyes on us. Even now, his forces are massing on our border. Make no mistake, this is an existential threat. We must meet it head-on." He zoomed in the display to show tactical projections of Zorgaxian warships, heavily armed monstrosities bristling with powerful cannons and shielding. "Xyloth commands the most formidable military machine this galaxy has ever seen, but humanity does not cower before tyrants. We will not go quietly into the shackles of slavery. If Xyloth wants our worlds, our people, our freedom, he is going to have to fight for every scorched inch. I propose a plan of defense." The Terran Alliance prepared for a desperate stand against the oncoming storm of Xyloth and his legions. Grim-faced human soldiers shipped out to reinforce garrison worlds. Warships formed battle lines. Ammunition factories churned day and night. The people of Earth and its colonies steeled themselves for the greatest test their civilization had ever faced. They had no idea of the dark forces that had arranged this clash of galactic powers, or of Grantha's sinister agenda. The shadowy mastermind looked on from Xyloth's flagship, his ancient eyes glittering in anticipation. The Zorgaxian warships tore through space, disgorging swarms of fighters and bombers. The Terran fleet moved to intercept, their own ships launching to meet the attack. The void lit up with the flashes of railguns, missiles, and beam weapons as the two armadas clashed. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Thorn barked as the bridge of his flagship shuddered under a barrage of impacts. Crew members frantically worked their consoles, rerouting power to shields and returning fire. Thorn gripped the arms of his command chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red icons representing Zorgaxian ships swarmed the screen, threatening to overwhelm the blue icons of the human defenders. Despite the Terrans' technological edge and Thorn's brilliant stratagems, the Zorgaxians' sheer numbers were grinding them down. The human ships fought with grim determination, exacting a steep price for every inch of space they gave. But Xyloth's horde seemed inexhaustible, and always more systems fell under the Conqueror's shadow. Thorn slammed a fist on his armrest in frustration. He knew he was losing this war. His people were being driven back, their defenses crumbling. He needed a new plan, something to neutralize Xyloth's devastating ability to subvert the minds of his enemies. But what? A hail from the comm officer interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, urgent transmission from Alliance Intelligence, eyes only." Thorn took the message in his private briefing room. The holo showed a grim-faced intelligence director. "Admiral, we've uncovered critical information about the Zorgaxian leader," she said. "An entity known as Granthor seems to be the source of his powers, some kind of ancient human with mind control abilities. It was found in stasis on a derelict ship and appears to be manipulating Xyloth." Thorn leaned forward intently. "Then Granthor is our key to stopping this invasion. Do we know where it is now?" "Our best guess is that it remains close to Xyloth, likely on his flagship. But, Admiral, there's more. The records suggest that Granthor was involved in the first human-Zorgaxian war millennia ago. We don't know the full story, but it seems to want our two species to destroy each other." Thorn's eyes hardened with determination. "Then we need to get to Granthor and put an end to its scheme. Assemble a team of our best commandos. We're going to infiltrate Xyloth's flagship and deal with this mind-controlling puppet master directly. It may be our only hope." The strike team assembled in the flagship's hangar bay, each member hand-picked by Thorn for their bravery and skills. He briefed them on the audacious plan, using a captured Zorgaxian transport ship to slip past the enemy defenses and board Xyloth's colossal command ship. Once in Seed, they would fight their way to Granthor's location and neutralize the entity by any means necessary. They all knew it was a desperate gambit. Some would not return, but the fate of humanity, of the whole galaxy, hung in the balance. Failure was not an option. As the disguised transport approached Xyloth's dagger-shaped flagship, Thorn saw the sheer scale of the monstrous vessel. It dwarfed anything in the human fleet. The commandos, clad in midnight black stealth armor, checked their weapons with the calm professionalism of those who had stared death in the face many times before. The transport shuddered as it set down in a cavernous landing bay. The moment the ramp lowered, all hell broke loose. Alarms shrieked, and Zorgaxian soldiers poured into the hangar, plasma rifles blazing. Thorn and his team fought their way out of the trap in a whirlwind of ruthless efficiency, gunning down the snarling reptilian defenders with cold precision. They raced deeper into the bowels of the ship, following the data captured from the transport to Granthor's probable location. Thorn blasted a hulking Zorgaxian warrior off its feet with his shotgun, even as his second-in-command wrestled another to the deck and sank a vibro knife into its throat. The air reeked of ozone, blood, and death, the deck shuddering under the pounding of heavy boots. Thorn ignored the trickle of blood seeping from a graze on his temple. They had to reach Granthor. Breaking into the entity's chamber, Thorn finally confronted the being that had orchestrated so much misery. Granthor turned from where it had been contemplating a star display, its withered face splitting into a ghastly smile. "Admiral Thorn, I wondered when you would come," it said, voice dripping with malice. Thorn kept his plasma rifle trained on the abomination, his aim unwavering. "It's over, Granthor. No more puppets, no more wars. This ends now." Granthor laughed, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Foolish human, you have no idea what you're meddling with. I am older and more powerful than you can possibly imagine." It raised a hand crackling with unnatural energy. Thorn felt an oily pressure worming into his mind, trying to subvert his will. He gritted his teeth and fought it with every fiber of his being. Through the haze of pain, he saw his soldiers writhing on the floor, overcome by Granthor's power. "Why are you doing this?" Thorn growled. "What do you want?" "You asked the right question, Admiral," Granthor said, its eyes gleaming with ancient madness. "You see, I feed on death, on suffering, on the delicious anguish of mortal beings, and nothing is more delightful than the exquisite destruction wrought when civilizations burn. I orchestrated your first downfall millennia ago, and now I shall savor your final annihilation." Thorn's blood ran cold at the eldritch horror's revelation. His mind raced, looking for any way to thwart Granthor's nihilistic plan. In his mind, he saw the worlds of the Terran Alliance burning, the corpses of his people shackled in slavery, children weeping in the ruins. No, he couldn't let that happen. There had to be a way. There had to... Granthor's withered face twisted into a cruel mockery of a smile as he regarded the defiant Admiral Thorn. The ancient being's eyes glowed with an unearthly light, boring into Thorn's mind like hot needles. "You really have no idea what you're dealing with, do you?" Granthor rasped, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You think yourselves the masters of the galaxy, but you are nothing more than children playing at Empire." Thorn gritted his teeth, struggling against the crushing pressure of Granthor's psychic assault. "We've stopped tyrants before," he growled. "We'll stop you too." Granthor laughed, a sound like the cracking of tombstones. "You cannot stop what you do not understand, Admiral. Allow me to enlighten you." The entity's form shimmered, and suddenly the chamber melted away. Thorn found himself floating in a vast starscape, galaxies wheeling overhead. Before him, the image of a planet took shape, a world of gleaming cities and verdant landscapes. "Behold the birthplace of my people," Granthor intoned. "We were like gods, Admiral. Through the power of our minds and the mastery of our genes, we built an empire that spanned the stars." Thorn watched as the planet's surface crawled with activity. Gargantuan machines reshaped continents, while fleets of starships blotted out the sun. At the center of it all stood towering figures, eerily beautiful, their eyes alight with the same glow as Granthor's. "We bent the very fabric of life to our will," Granthor continued. "We created servants to attend our every need, soldiers to fight our wars, slaves to build our wonders." The scene shifted, and Thorn saw legions of bioengineered creatures toiling under the watchful gaze of their masters. Some were little more than beasts of burden, while others walked upright, their features almost human. But we grew complacent in our power. We never imagined that our creations would dare to turn against us. The idyllic cities burned, the skies darkened by the smoke of 1,000 pyres. The genetically engineered slaves rose up, led by the most advanced of their kind. Thorn watched in horror as they stormed the gleaming towers, dragging their screaming masters into the streets. The war was long and brutal. In the end, only a handful of us survived, scattered across the stars. The vision faded, and Thorn found himself back in Granthor's chamber. The entity's face was a mask of hatred and bitterness. I alone endured, sustained by my thirst for vengeance. For millennia I waited, watching as new civilizations rose from the ashes of the old. Zorgaxians, humans, it matters not. You are all the same to me, savage children squabbling over the scraps of our empire. Thorn's mind reeled from the revelation, but he forced himself to focus. So this was all some twisted plan for revenge. You manipulated the Zorgaxians, started this whole war, just to watch us destroy each other. Destroy each other? Granthor sneered. Oh no, Admiral. I want you to suffer as I have suffered. I want you to know the agony of seeing everything you built brought to ruin, and when you have no hope left, when you have watched your people enslaved and your worlds burned, then and only then will I grant you the mercy of death. Thorn's hands clenched into fists. He could feel Granthor's malice washing over him, the weight of the entity's psychic powers pressing down on his mind. But he refused to yield. He thought of his people, of the brave men and women fighting and dying in the skies above. He thought of his home, of the green hills and blue oceans of Earth. He would not let this monster condemn them all to the abyss. You're going to be disappointed, Thorn said, his voice low and fierce. We humans don't break that easily. We've faced worse threats than you and come out stronger, and no matter what it takes, no matter what the cost, we will stop you. He gathered every ounce of his will, every scrap of defiance and determination, and hurled it at Granthor like a lance. The entity reeled back, its eyes widening in shock. Thorn pressed his advantage, pouring all his strength into the psychic duel. Around them, the chamber shook and shuddered as the battle of wills raged. Granthor snarled, dark energies coalescing around its form. Thorn stood firm, a pillar of indomitable resolve. He could feel Granthor's powers crashing against his mental barriers like a tidal wave, seeking any crack or weakness. But he would not falter, he would not fail. For the fate of humanity, for the future of the galaxy, he had to win. In the heart of Zeloth's flagship, Thorn and Granthor clashed in a titanic battle of wills. Psychic energy crackled and surged between them, the very air vibrating with the intensity of their struggle. Thorn gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of his mental strength into the fight. He could feel Granthor's ancient malice beating against his defenses, seeking to crush his mind into submission. But Thorn would not yield. He thought of his people, of the brave soldiers fighting and dying in the void beyond. He thought of Earth, of the green hills and blue oceans he had sworn to defend, and with a roar of defiance he hurled his will against Granthor like a thunderbolt. The ancient being staggered, his eyes widening in shock. "Impossible," he hissed. "No mere human could—" "I am no mere human," Thorn snarled. "I am a warrior of Earth, and I will not let you destroy all that I hold dear." He advanced on Granthor, his mental power blazing like a supernova. The ancient human fell back, his withered face contorted in fear and rage. In the depths of space, the Terran fleet was locked in a desperate battle with the Zorgaxian armada. Plasma beams and missiles crisscrossed the void, ships exploding in fiery cataclysms. Admiral Zhang, Thorn's second-in-command, barked orders from the bridge of the flagship, her face grim and determined. "All ships concentrate fire on the enemy dreadnoughts," she shouted. "We have to hold them back." The human vessels surged forward, their weapons blazing. Zorgaxian ships shattered and burst under the onslaught, but more always took their place. Zhang knew they were fighting a losing battle. Unless something changed, they would be overwhelmed. Aboard Zeloth's ship, the Zorgaxian leader clutched his head, groaning in pain. Thorn's psychic duel with Granthor was resonating through the ship, and Xyloth could feel the ancient human's hold on his mind weakening. What have I done? He whispered, staring at his clawed hands in horror. I've doomed us all. Slowly he turned to face the view screen, where the battle raged in all its terrible glory. His eyes hardened with resolve. This ends now, he growled. Xyloth strode to the command console, his talons flying over the controls. All ships, this is your Emperor, he broadcast. Cease fire on the humans. Target the Ancient One's vessel. We must destroy Granthor at all costs. There was a moment of stunned silence, then a ragged cheer from the Zorgaxian crews. Their ships wheeled about, weapons swiveling to lock onto Granthor's ship. Plasma beams and torpedoes slammed into the ancient vessel's hull, ripping through its shields. On the bridge, Granthor screamed in rage and pain, his form flickering like a guttering candle. "No!" he howled. "I will not be denied my revenge." He lashed out with a burst of psychic power, sending Thorn flying. The Admiral crashed into a bulkhead, his vision swimming. Granthor loomed over him, eyes blazing with madness. "You think you've won?" the ancient being snarled. "You are nothing, human. I will crush you like an insect." Thorn struggled to his feet, blood trickling from his lip. "Not today," he said, "and not ever." He held out a hand to Xyloth, who had entered the bridge, a plasma rifle clutched in his claws. The Zorgaxian hesitated, then grasped the human's hand. Together they turned to face Granthor. "Your time is over, Ancient One," Xyloth said. "You will never again threaten the galaxy." Granthor screamed, a sound of unhinged fury and desperation. Dark energy gathered around him, swirling like a vortex. "If I must die, I will take you all with me." He unleashed a storm of psychic power, ripping through the ship like a hurricane. Consoles exploded, bulkheads buckled. Thorn and Xyloth were flung back, their minds battered by the psychic onslaught. But they did not fall. Thorn reached deep within himself, drawing on every reserve of strength and will. Beside him, he felt Xyloth doing the same, the Zorgaxian's mind blazing with fierce determination. They stood together against the storm, a human and a Zorgaxian united in their defiance. And with a final, titanic effort, they pushed back against Granthor's power. The ancient being's scream rose to a crescendo, then cut off abruptly as his form shattered like glass. The psychic storm dissipated, leaving only echoing silence. Thorn and Xyloth sagged, exhausted but triumphant. Around them the ship shuddered and groaned, alarms blaring. They had won, but the damage was done. The ancient vessel was tearing itself apart. "We have to get out of here," Thorn said, staggering towards the escape pods. Xyloth followed, his face grim. They barely made it before the ship exploded, a miniature sun blooming in the void. The shockwave ripped through the Zorgaxian armada, scattering their ships like leaves in a gale. The Terran fleet pushed forward, seizing their chance. In the aftermath, as the last Zorgaxian ships limped away in surrender, Thorn and Xyloth stood together on the bridge of the human flagship. They looked out at the stars, the wreckage of the battle drifting around them. "It's over," Thorn said quietly. "Granthor is gone." So Xyloth nodded, his eyes haunted. "But at what cost? My people, my empire, I led them to ruin." Thorn placed a hand on the Zorgaxian's shoulder. "You can rebuild," he said. "We both can, and this time we'll do it together." Xyloth looked at him, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "A new era," he said. "An era of peace and cooperation between all the peoples of the galaxy." Thorn smiled. "I like the sound of that." They turned back to the stars, ready to face the challenges of a new dawn. As word of Granthor's defeat spread, the remaining Zorgaxian forces quickly crumbled. Without their leader and his psychic powers, they were directionless and demoralized. Many surrendered outright, while others fled to the far corners of the galaxy. The Terran alliance, bruised but unbroken, began the long process of rebuilding. Thorn found himself hailed as a hero, the man who had saved humanity from enslavement and extinction. But he knew that the true credit belonged to every soldier, every ship captain, every civilian who had stood against the darkness. In the weeks that followed, Thorn worked tirelessly to forge a new relationship with the Zorgaxians. It was not easy, given the bitter history between their peoples, but Xyloth proved to be a steadfast ally, dedicating himself to atoning for his past crimes. Together they formed the Galactic Union, an alliance of species committed to peace, prosperity, and mutual defense. It was an ambitious undertaking, fraught with challenges and obstacles, but Thorn knew that it was the only way forward. He stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned space station Unity, gazing out at the stars. Xyloth stood beside him, his scales gleaming in the soft light. "We've come a long way," the Zorgaxian said. "Yes, we have," Thorn agreed, "but there's still so much to do. The galaxy is vast, and there are countless wonders and dangers waiting to be discovered." Xyloth chuckled. "Then it's a good thing we have each other, isn't it?" Thorn smiled. "Indeed it is, my friend, indeed it is." They turned back to the stars, ready to face whatever the future might bring. The road ahead would not be easy, but they would walk it together, human and Zorgaxian, united in their determination to build a better galaxy for all. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.